So I've brought my creature in. I want him to be about this size. I'm going to place him. Okay. I might rotate him a little bit. He looks really bright on that dark background, but don't worry about that. Okay, now, let's see. Let me turn it back to the background that's at full light. There it is. All right. I'm going to delete those other layers, and I'm now going to rename this file my character assets. So save as Carl assignment 5 character assets. Now remember, my stage is still saved. Want to make sure I put it onto the desktop. And now basically we're always working between at least two files, between asset files in Photoshop and stage files in Photoshop. Where is my stage file? So if you misplace a file, the reason we name them with our names is so that we can look them up. So there it is. Oh, that's not the one I want. That's the one I want. Let me make sure I save it to the desktop. Oh, I'm saving in assignment 1. That's where it ended up. Okay, so always saving to the desktop. I want to make sure I'm saving my character assets file to the desktop as a PSD. And I want to make sure saving my sketches to the desktop. And then I also want to make sure I'm saving my background assets, because I'm not done with those. I have storms coming. And I'm saving that to the desktop. Great. Okay. Now, my character assets, it's very simple. For movements and changes I want to make to my character, I simply duplicate the character onto a new layer and then make a change to them. So one change I want is the beak moving up and down. So how can I do that? Well, I can select around this beak, and I can duplicate it on its own layer for the time being, and then I can transform it, and I can rotate it, and I can move it. In little increments, right? And I can erase away. Not just from the beak itself, but from the beak behind. And basically I'm recompositing that image to show that beak moving. Now I could keep that beak as a separate character asset, which might make a lot of sense, because the head might not move, but the beak will move on the head. You know, so it goes from this image to this image. So what I would like to do is I'll label this as my beak asset. Then I'll make a duplicate of it. And then I'll merge the beak with the layer behind using Command E. So now I have it going from this frame to this frame. And now I'll just duplicate again. And then move that beak some more. And I like to do everything in about 3 or 4 frames. Remember all of our different skills. So we can use warp, we can use distort, we can use skew, we can transform it in all these little ways to make that movement feel better. Because we obviously aren't training a bird. And instead of using the eraser tool too much when I'm doing these, I just use the lasso and delete. You want to be nice and deliberate with each move. Okay, so now I have the beak going through these 3 stages. And what's great is I can play that forward and backwards and have that beak opening and closing. So those are my beak assets. Next, I can take the eye and instead of using the whole bird this time, I'm just going to focus on the eye. And so I'll label this my eye assets, or I can label these with certain colors as well. Since the eye is so hard to see, this is going to be very subtle. So I take that eye, then I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to composite in an eyelid. I'll just steal it from this flower here. Duplicate that, move it over, put it on top. Use levels to darken its color. And this will be the upper eyelid. And now I'm going to work backwards. So I'm going to make a duplicate, and then I'll go to the layer underneath, and I'm going to shrink that eyelid a little bit. And I think I'll use warp since this is more organic. Okay, and then duplicate it again. And warp it again. Okay, and you can't have an upper eyelid without a lower eyelid, right? So that's how the upper eyelid animates. Actually, let me do the eyelid one more time and integrate that into the eye itself. Make it a little bit thinner. Whoops. There we go. So it really feels like it comes from the recesses. Okay. Like so. And now I will make the lower eyelid. Let's see what texture would be good. Maybe this here. Bring that to the top, move it over, rotate it, play with it, composite it, stretch it. Warp it if need be. And this is called working backwards in animation. First going to figure out where I want that eyelid to be fully closed. So let me turn on the full eyelid. There we go. And this will be the lower eyelid. See? And let me darken it a little bit. There we go. The reason I'm not making it all the way shut is I needed to read from a distance that there's still the space between those two. And now to animate it, I simply transform and warp it backwards. The reason I work backwards is this way I can really control how many steps it takes. And if I took 4 steps for the other eyelid, I want to do 4 steps for this one, so that they close together. It's so key in animation to have a clear plan of what you're trying to do, because it takes so much thought to get there. That's why the storyboard is not a suggested step, it's an absolutely necessary step. Okay, so that's how the lower eyelid animates. I want to move this down. Thin it out a little bit more. There we go. All right. Now, the fun part. I don't know if I'll have time to fully do this, but I'm building my character assets for closing the beak and blinking the eye, and those will both open and close. But now I need to kind of move the wings a little bit, treat the whole body. So to do that, let me see. I'm going to make a copy of the full body. And I'm going to isolate out the beak in all those layers so I can animate the body separate from the beak and the eye. And just delete that from all my beak layers. All right. So now the body will move independently. And just make sure those all are labeled in some way. And maybe color them. So I'll make all the beak layers yellow.